There's a lot of cause for that, but I would want to kind of talk about today that the reason our teenage sons are distracted is because they're in a biological phase of development. They're in a biological phase of development. And in this particular phase, it could be called their physical phase of development. Or when I'm outward speaking to NFL teams or college teams or young college students or high school students, I often call this phase of development the warrior class, right? This is the fighting class of the human organism or the human entity, right? But it has phases that pre-existed, and it has phases that will come afterwards, right? So when your child is born, they're in the infant stage, right? And it requires intense parental observation, intense parental nurturance, intense parental just right there with them. You can never really take your eyes off of them. But you realize if you look back at baby pictures and you see your chubby, barely no hair kind of infant child, son or daughter, and then you look at them now, you're amazed at the growth. You're amazed that the features are beginning to develop. Their coming of age process. They got a little bit of bass in their voice, right? They're respectfully, hopefully challenging in age appropriate kinds of ways. But the key thing there is that they're no longer that infant baby that you had, right? Human beings, we develop over time. We develop biologically. That has outward physicality to it. You can see it. You can see change. But also there's internal change, kind of phraseology, kind of your own biological consistency with human development, or particularly in this instant, male development. And then following sort of their infant stage, they kind of go into a toddler phase where they're moving about and they're trying to get dexterity and agility and kind of get their limbs and understanding their body and their balance and those kind of things. And that's always, the terrible twos, the terrible threes, but that's because they're ripping and running, man. They're experiencing and exploring life. And that's all critical, right? But, infant, toddler, and then they might go into kind of an adolescent phase where, again, their body is developing, their cognition, their sense of things and understanding, and they sort of look outward for cues for people who are in immediate proximity to them as a way of learning. In the toddler and even infant stage, the way they learn is they learn by touch. They put things in their mouth, right? That's their mouth is a source of sensory of discovery. And they look outwardly to see people's reaction, right? If they see smiles, if they see adoration, then they said, okay, then this, what I'm doing is okay. It's permissible. It's acceptable. It's encouraged. But if they see the parents freak out, right, and they're running to the baby, right, the baby quickly learns that, hey, what I'm doing, right, what I'm touching, what I'm about to do, what I'm grabbing, what I'm putting in my mouth is not something I ought to be doing. And they learn by outward messages, outward affirmation. Thank you, Dr. Went, for promoting the book. Truly appreciate that. And that's how they learn, right? But then through adolescence, they go from just not immediate reaction, but to interpretation. And they're looking at different things and they get subtle cues. And that's why it's so important that parents reinforce positive behaviors and they quickly address problematic behaviors, and that they put the babies that realizing they're constantly learning. And the way they learn is through touch, gleaning the environment, surveying the environment, waiting for input, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. And that's all a part of the coming of age process. And they're always observing. The 6-year-old is always observing, right? Their language acumen is increased. They're able to put vocabulary together. That's why it's so critical that you read to your baby. So there's a correlation between the amount of words they know, the level of vocabulary they have, and future success academically in high school. And then should they go on, that's tied to vocabulary. And so they're developing their language set, their communication style. And this is all a part of their body growing literally, their mind cognitively, and all of this meshing together is moving towards the phase of puberty, right? And if you all have experienced puberty, well, puberty is the transition from child, really. If you define the ability to produce a child, I mean, if anything that would take you out of child stage is your ability to produce a child, right? Well, puberty, the seminal culmination of puberty is the capacity for a male child to produce sperm that is potent, sperm that can then produce a human life, right? And so puberty is the, hair starts to pop up on the body, start to get funky, all these kinds of things going on in the mindset of boys. They're beginning to just experience life, and their body is sort of talking to them in different ways. Their voice changes. Maybe they had that wet dream, whatever the case may be. But things shift from cognition and learning, and now it becomes a very heightened sense of their body, right? Young boys around 14, 15 we get a very heightened sense of their body because it's inevitable. Their body is speaking to them in literal, physical, visible kinds of ways. Hair, funkiness, maybe zits, acne. The body's just going through this metamorphosis, and in its most biological signal, its most biological signature is the ability to produce a child, right? So that's kind of the up to the puberty phase. But what I want to talk about more so here is what are your teens dealing with, right? And you probably have all kinds of adjectives when it comes to your teens, right? Some of them are doing beautiful. They're balancing school, they're balancing sport, they're balancing relationships, whatever the case may be. Some of them, though, they might be distracted, right? You can't get them to focus in. Their mind is just kind of in constant back and forth and constant contradiction. You might find them a little bit more resistant to guidance and instruction. You might find them obsessively going into things that they like. We talked a little bit about that before. They're starting to come into their own sense of budding independence, and that's consistent. You need to know that your son is normal, that this resistance, this challenging, this questioning that they're kind of going through is absolutely consistent with the teenage age set. In fact, if I had to give a time frame for the warrior class, it would be roughly around 15 following puberty to roughly 26, and it's really intense around 17 to 22 years old, right, where they're in this warrior class. But out of the puberty phase, they enter into what they call a physical phase. And here's some of the things that the research tells us, as well as some of my own anecdotal dealings with beautiful young men. Again, shout out to the J4 family. So good to see you guys in here. If you wouldn't mind, I'd love for you to make your presence known, throw your name in the box, send a shout out, whatever the case may be. I'd like to shout you out, share this with the beautiful people. All right. Now, the first thing that the warrior class wants is they want independence from you. They want independence from you, mama and dad. This is where they begin to talk about the car, right? They want to drive. This is all preceding that is the phone obsession. They want the phone because the phone gives them a sense of peer alignment, but it also gives them an outlet, sort of an autonomy, a way of engaging the world through their own terms, right? Not having to do that or navigate that through parental approval, right? But immediately following the phone acquisition is the car, right? They want the car. The car is a symbol of complete independence. Not complete independence, but the car is a symbol of physical independence. The ability to get up, get in the car, go where they want to go, and have an experience, have some autonomy, have some independence, and then, of course, come on back. But the car is a physical structure of physical independence. And that's what this age set is looking for. They're looking to be independent from their mama and their daddy. Biologically, they need to do that because all young people from time infinitum need to eventually embark, out onto their own. That's what we are raising them for. That's what we're educating and exposing them to different things in life, to eventually have the inevitable transition that they will be on their own, right? That is a generational responsibility. It's a parental responsibility. And it is ultimately what we have to be preparing our babies to do, to become independent. And again, they are in a physical phase, and a part of that physical phase is dealing with independence. If any of y'all sort of struggled with this, my babies want to get away from me kind of nuance. Anybody been struggling with that? Dr. Went, Mimi, no, Mimi wants her, she wants them out. The other piece is their peer group. At no other time in their life has their peer group been more important to them. Their sense of friendships. In fact, a lot of angst you'll see in sons, perhaps not spoken as much, but certainly daughters. I certainly experienced that with mine. Is their social standing? Are they being invited to the social events? Are they being included in the group texts? Are they maintaining a sense of popularity? The whole lunchroom table kind of nuance, right? You look at it in your 40ness and your 50ness, and it's silly now, right? But it wasn't silly when you were 16. It wasn't silly when you were 17. And that's what they're dealing with. And the reason is because their peer group is where they get affirmation, where they get social cues, where they get social hierarchy and standing, and where they get a sense of the feel good, right? Their parents at this point, they believe, hopefully, that the parents are going to have proven care and love and functionality, right? So they understand for the most part what they'll get from parents. If they have siblings, they have a connection to them, and they have, love tug kind of relationship with their siblings. They probably had a good friend, a couple of friends from elementary, middle school, but now their social sphere has broadened. Their social sphere has become more than an intimate crew to the sophomore class, to the junior class, right? Whatever the case may be. And their peer standing is critically important. And the way in which they're doing that is a process of what value do they bring to the group. That's a part of groups. And then also, how do they prove themselves to groups? It is critical, particularly for boys, to prove themselves valuable to their peer group. This is something they're looking to do, something they're seeking to do, and it's the way they gain privilege and status within their groups by what they can contribute to the group. Now, types of contributions can be swag, right? How they carry themselves. It can be conversation, how they motivate, how they praise and applaud, right? How they demonstrate friendship to peers, how they translate comparable experiences. You can imagine a 17, maybe a 16-year-old might be sharing something in their own nuance and rhythm as boys do, right? And to them, it's the first time, man. It might be serious, man. It might be something they're dealing with at school, something they're dealing with their parents, or something they're dealing with in their own spirit. And they share that in their own language and in their own style. And then they look about to see who is sort of responsive to them, who's coming to their rescue, for lack of a better term. And that's how peers demonstrate loyalty and consistency with each other. So their standing among their peers is critically important. And that's why you see young men who want to kind of get out the house, because that's the space in which they make their peer connections. So what we got here, Miss Mimi, Rhonda Ward and Green Battalion also in the house. They don't want to know how to let you know. Well, Gwen, good to see you. Thank you so much, family. Thank you so much, family. And again, if you guys are just joining us, this is J4 Conversations, where two fathers and sons talk about this thing called life, the coming of age process. But on periodic occasions, we'll do a solo dolo. That's kind of what I'm doing today. So they want to get away from you, and they want to get to their peers. That's where it's at. That's where it's popping. That's where they express. That's where they come of age. And that's where they feel a sense of independence, a sense of life, right? You go from I am the son of X mom and X dad to now I'm asserting myself by my own name, right? And I'm developing my own kind of reputation. So the other piece is this is where they begin to discover their sexual self, right? With puberty, again, we're talking about the production of life for males. That's the penis. The penis becomes very evident, for the 15, 16, 17 years old. They're very mindful of it. They walk around the house with their hands in the pants, always touching it. That's consistent with the age set. Providing my son with a network early on, in addition to his friend group of other young males, was so beneficial to my son. Absolutely, Dr. Went. Parents, you got to provide opportunities for your boys to be around other boys, particularly in the teenage years. It's where they're developing their social norms and understanding, and where they're making connections that will develop skills and silent reads, how to read situations. They discover that through teenage peer groups. So they're, in addition to independence and peers, their penis is on their mind. I don't know a better way to say that, Dr. Went, Mimi, but that is on their mind, or to translate that, sex is on their mind, and how they fare among the other half, right? Whatever their love interests are. I'm not getting into how they love, but they love someone other than themselves and other than their parents, and in a sort of Greek philia kind of way, their peer group, right? They go from philia, which is family love, to sort of eros, which is romantic love. It's in its most infancy. It's bubblegum. And yeah, April says the right type of peers. Absolutely, right. Parents, if you're not being selective about who you expose your sons to, that's problem number one. So absolutely. But so they have eros interest. They're very curious about the objects of their sexual interest, right? And they're also curious about how they're perceived, right? They want to know, do they have standing? Do they have popularity? Are they of interest to the community of people that they're interested in? This is very natural with the age set, and can lend itself to the theme of, why is my teenage son so distracted? Your teenage son is distracted because he wants to get away from you. He wants to get to his people, and his penis is on his mind. Right? That's what he's dealing with. And so they're very much in a physical stage, and sexual curiosity is very much a part of that, very much a part of it, which also then brings up the need to have conversations about sex with this age set. 15, again, they're coming off puberty. They have the capacity to produce a child. You have to have a conversation about how not to produce a child until you are well down the road and ready. So here you have to have the conversation. You as a parent group got to think about the who and the how and the when, right? Because they're having the conversation. They're having the conversation with their peers. They're having the conversation with the internets in all kinds of ways. They're having conversations on what they search in their Google box. They may be dabbling in porn, those kind of things. So if they can produce a child, you got to have a conversation about what it means to produce a child, and then make some decisions about how you want to manage that, right? If you simply put your head in the sand and don't think that this is on their mind, you're fooling yourself, because it's unique to your son, it's unique to the age set of human beings that are male, to be curious about other people. And their body literally is telling them through erection, when they wake up in the morning or when they see something that they like, their body tells them, hey, this is a priority, man. Hey, this is something we got to be dealing with. Their body, their physiology tells them, right? Even if they don't want to think about it, their body tells them, hey, it's on my mind. I could go a whole lot with that, but we'll just keep that there. So sex is on their mind, right? And they're trying to get access to male peer groups. At some point, male peer groups will have their bonding, but oftentimes their attention or their purpose of coming together is to then engage in social settings with other young people of their age set. And this is all going on, and it's all very new. It's all very new, J4 family. And that is in part why your son is distracted. And they're then dealing with the emotions of interest, right? In their mind, especially if they have a girlfriend or they're exploring infancy relationship, they're exploring baby love, right? that's all new, man. There's excitement and exhilaration, and they're trying to manage, and they're trying to maximize attention and minimize rejection, right? This is all going on, right? And it's going on in a way that you as parents never had to experience. The spaces for acceptance and rejection were typically relegated to house parties, where you had to have the courage to walk over to another person and say, would you like to dance with me in front of what you thought was the world? And that person would either say yes or no, and everybody knew how you reacted. If you walk back with that person to the dance floor, she accepted. But if she said no, then you had to walk your butt back alone, right? You had to deal with that rejection. But that's a part of the coming of age process, and that's what your sons are dealing with in their upper teenage kinds of phase. And so it's not that they're off your program. It's not that they don't prioritize all the things you want them to prioritize, and you have to keep that on their agenda. It's just that now their body and their biology is telling them or is having them contend with a whole lot of things that they just didn't have to prior to that. Okay. So let me just walk you through the remaining phases, and then we'll go back to the warrior class to just kind of close that out. Everybody good? Everybody good? All right. I see some folks in here. I think we're going viral. We're at 7. This is beautiful. This is beautiful. Again, welcome J4 family. 2 fathers, 2 sons, chopping it up on life. This one here is a J4 solo dolo. Please share, like, and subscribe, and help us grow in our purpose and in our spirit. So after about 26, the person enters their physical phase, will leave their physical phase because they've kind of gotten the lessons that they need to get out of that. And then they enter into what I'll call probably the intellectual phase. Because in the teen years, you begin to become curious about subject matter, politics, religion, economics, constructs, those kind of things. But you're at the beginning of that. But that is sort of secondary to your physicality, to your sense of physical self. And interestingly, though, college years are right in the heart of the warrior class years, and there's often an incongruency between biologically being physically explorative while the environment's asking you to be intellectually explorative, right? So there's a ill timing there. There's an incongruency, but that's kind of the way it is until it changes. It's not until after the physicality stage where one in their mid-20s who is, in kind of full-fledged adulthood here, the mind is fully developed, they've had enough exposure, should be fully independent from parents, they're standing on their own 2 feet, and now they're taking on intellectual spaces, largely manifested in self-interest, self-erudition, self-reading, self-exploration, but also careers, because they got to make an earning, and they're doing a lot of that with their mind, right? And then after a certain duration, one goes from their intellectual self, they then enter into their emotional or psychological self. And things like love and care and beauty and inspiration are now prominent in their life, right? Maybe they're in their 40s, they're in their 50s at this time. They realize, hopefully by now they have a relationship and they're past the physicality of the relationship that's familiar. And what do you then rely on for meaning, for self-connection, for compassion? That is typically your emotional and psychological self. Those are things that are critical to sustain relationship, but are also critical for parental, to be a parent, to be a father, a mother raising a child. Those are often emotional, psychological kinds of navigations and negotiations that are required to be there in the moment, problem solving, motivating, encouraging, pushing, pulling back, all the things associated with adult rearing, to join with someone else to make that work while raising another someone else, right? To make that work. And then the final phase of the human development is spirituality, right? Spirituality, however you define it or live it, is when you realize that you are not going to live forever, beautiful family. You realize that you will at some point transition and you will go dance with the ancestors. That is inevitable. It's the latter part of life, 50, 55. You see your parents going through issues. Maybe they've transitioned themselves. You see people at work, peers that are a little bit older than you, and they're transitioning. That becomes way more a part of your awareness than earlier stages of your life, when your friends or mentors or professors or supervisors, literally are at the dawn or have transitioned to the ancestors, and it smacks you square in the head, right? It smacks you square in the face. You begin to ask the grander questions of life, right? You begin to think and align yourself in a spiritual dynamic, because despite one's 20s, 30s, 40s, and how you move or interpret theology or religion, the fact that this body eventually shuts down, and you got this inner thing inside of you, whatever that might be called, perhaps the soul, and inevitably you're going to wonder, well, does this thing continue on, right? And that's the unanswered question for many folks, but it puts them in a spiritual inward reflection space while simultaneously managing life, right? So infant, toddler, adolescence, puberty, your son's in the physical stage right now, then it's intellectual, emotional, psychological, and then spiritual. So just to kind of close out, and I really appreciate the feedback, Dr. Went. I see Mimi was in there representing with family, is in the warrior class, in addition to being independent, wanting to get the hell away from you, wanting to get to their peer group, wanting to explore this beautiful thing called love and relationships, is that they also are in a state of feeling invincible. They feel like they could live forever. You could actually give some of your sons a lie detector test and ask, will you one day die? And they could pass the test and say no. That's consistent with the age set. They feel immortal. And the wonderful nuance of the human family, of the dynamics of what we need, the human organism, is we need a certain age set of the human populace to feel as if they will live forever. Because when you think you're going to live forever, you act in certain kinds of ways. That means you're willing to take risks, right? You're willing to do things that a more seasoned, a more reserved human being just won't do. So, for example, we realize that human beings eventually are going to have confrontation. They're going to have disagreements. And when you have countries that have disagreements, inevitably that escalates to war. But who does the populace, who does the society go to recruit to fight the wars, right? It doesn't recruit the 4-year-old. The 4-year-old too busy putting things in their mouth, right? It doesn't recruit the 10-year-old, doesn't have the body capacity. It doesn't recruit the 50-year-old, right? Because I'm not, hell no, I'm not doing that, right? But you go ask the 18-year-old, you go ask the warrior class, like, hell yeah. I want to be challenged. I want to prove myself, right? I want adrenaline. I want to express my testosterone. Bring it on, right? There's something unique and necessary about the warrior class age set, because this is the fighting class. This is the fighting class, and problematically, or just inherent to humans, is that there is an element of self-preservation and protection. We do it at an individual level, and we do it as a group level. And the warrior class plays a critical part in the fighting class of the human organism as a whole. That is also why they're distracted. We want them to sit down and do cerebral, intellectual kinds of things. They want to go. They want to go, right? And a part of the way they express that is they have a propensity or the possibility or the reality that violence is in their toolkit. A coping mechanism or a means of expression or a means of problem solving for young boys is that they will consider violence. And that's consistent with the age set, right? The violence, a combativeness, right? High priority on respect. Those are consistent themes with the male age set of 15 to 26 years old. Mimi says, from Gwen, why are young men so quick to feel they're being disrespected? Do they really know what it even means? Okay. So that kind of ties to what I was just sharing, because respect is how they manage their hierarchy among their peers. Respect can be defended. Respect can be demanded. Respect typically is backed up by physicality. Again, the propensity for violence. And males are comfortable operating in a space where violence is always an undergird. It's how we maintain respect among each other, right? Because men always know there's a potential low level for violence, so it sort of shapes how we interact with each other, right? There's a certain consensus, a certain kind of acquiesce. There's a certain kind of reading if things are escalating that, okay, am I willing to go the full, am I willing to go take this to the highest level, right? And so we manage our relationships with each other, always knowing that there's an underlying possibility that we could throw hands, right? That's what manages male behavior. The reason we put such a premium on it is because it is tied to our standing among our peer group. And we quickly realize if I cannot defend myself verbally and or with the threat of physicality, my standing in my peer group will diminish. It'll be on the lower end rather than the higher end. Now, nobody wants a fool that's unpredictable, a bully, an outright maniacal, violent human being. That person will be ostracized from the group. But the group eventually will figure out that we have the capacity for violence. We know that if we were to also to put hands on each other, it's likely that one or two upper percentage of the group will be able to hold their own, and we'll kind of acquiesce to that as long as the agreement is there. You respect me, and I will respect you. So when we put a premium on respect, because it's how we determine our value among groups, which then in turn gives us our own sense of self, our own sense of esteem, our own sense of internal confidence. And we know that we need that because that's what will help us move into the world. Now, it can be hyper, it can be very exaggerated. And if you don't have balance and intergenerational ways of working through this, talking through this, you then have people who are taking trivial respect issues to the extreme, and they're causing mayhem and extreme violence. And they're going from what ought to be tests of young manhood, which could be verbosity, talking smack, right? Maybe a little head bump, right? Maybe a few blows, right? That's all a part of our transition. But, we live in the 21st century where one has access to things and weaponry and tools of violence that just weren't there when previous generations were going through adulthood. So to understanding your point, the risk is very much more higher. The potential for malehood rites of passage now becomes malehood rights to death, and murder. So that is problematic as well. But men do need challenges that are of a physical nature because it's how we determine hierarchy and create status and internal capital, internal sense of self that propels us forward. And in a crazy kind of way, it's also a way in which we kind of create our standing among people that we have interest in, right? A young lady, if that's who we're interested in, she wants a man that can hold his own, right? Wants a man that's going to kind of stand their ground, at least has the capacity for it. And we realize, we pick up on that, and it has various values for us, and it's something that's remained a part of us since perhaps the earliest of days. So thank you, Gwen. I appreciate the question. So they're willing to take risks, violence is in their toolkit, and because they're willing to take risks, the value that young boys and girls bring to the society is that they are the ones who typically invent things. They're the ones who typically create things. Let me just let that marinate a minute. How we doing, J4 family? I'm feeling good. We're vibing. Ask some more questions, drill talk. Okay. They're the ones who are willing to take risks. So for example, why can we fly? No, well, let's go back. Why can we drive a car? No, let's stay with the airplane. Why can we as human beings now fly in an airplane? Why? Because somebody who was fierce, looking to prove themselves, curious about life, didn't have any fear of their own harm, said, Look at that bird in the sky. Look at how that bird fly, right? And they anatomically said, I see wings, I see weight distribution. The ability to fly has something to do with them wings, right? So some fool went and got some wood planks, tied them up on himself, had some other males with him, some other teenage males, and went and found a little cliff, about an 8-foot cliff, when they fell, inevitably they're gonna fall. They wouldn't kill themselves, but they said, I'm going to try this. And that fool strapped on them wood planks and ran and jumped off that cliff and got a sense of aerodynamics, got a sense of physics, got a sense of pain, I'm sure, but the mind began to work. It is this age, the warrior class, who is willing to take risks. They're willing to ingest experimental medicines. They're willing to ingest unfamiliar foods, right? Because in their mind, they think they can overcome it. They think they can power through it, right? They had the physicality to go dig it up, to create machines and these kind of things. So this is where their mind is, and it's consistent with the age set, but it is also why they often seem distracted. A lot of times young boys want more. They want energy. They want to bark at the moon. They want to just be tested. They want to be praised. They want to do things that bring them applause and favor and pats on the back, right? Yet we're trying to get them to, get a little minimum wage job and do well in chemistry, right? But their warrior class is ready to pop. They're ready to go. They're ready to do the thing, right? And they want to be seen, and they're curious about who's watching them. And so that's a little bit about why I believe your teenage sons may be distracted. And this is what I'll close with. I'll probably close a couple times. Everybody doing good? April, you still in the house? Mimi, you still in the house? I see you, Deanne, joining in from Alaska. Great food for thought, no doubt, no doubt. This is the last thing I'll share. In a modern time, young people in this age set, they are tied to the sense of instant feeling, right? You might call that instant gratification. You might call that a need to be in the now, right? I think this is the reason TikTok has so many young millionaires. Hey, Rita, good to see you. Absolutely, absolutely, because they're able to put something out immediately and get immediate feedback, right? As someone that's trying to grow the YouTube channel, and by the way, family, y'all like the YouTube channel, go to J4 Conversation and give us a like, is because you do get immediate feedback. So that's something that certainly is intense in your late teens and early 20s, but as evidenced by my 53-year-oldness, it is also, kind of it has some value, right? It gives me some personal feel good in the process. Hey, Mimi. But so young people, sort of mark milestones by Fridays, right? They look forward to the Friday. All of this other stuff in between, this Sunday through Thursday stuff is just something I got to go through to get to the fun part, right? They mark milestones by Fridays. Or another way to say it is that young people in this age set are in an internal civil war, y'all. They're in an internal civil war between their social self, which is where they express themselves in their own ways with their peer group, and the society and often parents who want them to be focused in on their intellectual self. But this age set, 15 to 26, with a particular concentration on 16 to 21, young people are in an internal civil war with themselves, both fighting for dominant identity. Biologically, the physical self is what is dominantly there, the sense of who I am, my body's talking to me, I want to express, and what the society is asking them to do, which is to be internally, cognitively, intellectually centered, right? These two are at odds with each other. As I mentioned earlier, college is incongruent. The timing of college is misaligned with where a person is biologically. However, that is our reality. And one great conversation to have with your sons and to your daughters is acknowledging that their biology represented through their social self, but yet what is required for future success and sense of achievement is their intellectual self. At this age set, they're battling each other. They're battling each other. And this is why your sons are distracted, right? And so how do you as a parent give legitimacy to the social self, i.e. physical self, while requiring and demanding legitimacy for the intellectual self? Those are great conversations to have. I have found when talking with your beautiful sons, if you can just say, hey, handle the mental stuff first. Handle the intellectual stuff first, and everything else will have balance. We're also transitioning as a human time and era from earnings that are rooted in what you can do with your hands, what you can do with the dirt, agriculture, what you can do with machinery, industrialization. Now we live in a time where largely our earnings and our functionality and our efficiencies are done through technological manipulation, right? How we message, manage, move, manipulate information. That's largely the outcome of the mind. And so acknowledging where they're at, nothing wrong with them. They're in a perfect stage of development. Sometimes it looks chaotic and irritating to you, but also acknowledge the 21st century requires this balance. Social is going to exist regardless. The intellectual self, those are choices. Those are necessary tools for a modern era. If they can lead with their intellectual self, if that person can check all the boxes and sort of manage the life, everything else will have balance to include the natural coming of age of a physical stage of development necessary for future phases and management. Beautiful family, that's what I wanted to share. I want to thank you guys for sharing this. Please subscribe. I'm not looking at the YouTube channel, but Miss Rita, Miss Gwen, Mimi, if you haven't already, April, if you haven't already, please go to YouTube and click on the J4 Conversations. Just type that in. It'll pop up, and then subscribe. Because when you do, it notifies you, but it also helps us grow as a community. Dr. Wynn says, great discussion. Thank you. I highly recommend Warrior Class by Alonzo Jones. That's a book I wrote called The Warrior Class and the Internal Quest for Sexual Conquest. It's a good read for probably a graduating senior going into college. All right, beautiful family. Rita Brunt, I did share this link on my Facebook page. Thank you so much, Rita. Go to YouTube, give us a subscribe. Any other last closing thoughts? This has been a joy. Can't believe we were here 50 minutes. Went pretty quick. If you have other topics that you think would be relevant to you as parents who are raising children, most of our subject matter leans towards sons or fathers, but there's some cross relevancy. Thank you. Okay, April says she'll get in there. Okay, thank you so much. All right, beautiful family, I'm going to go ahead and log out. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. We'll try to do more content on a consistent basis. But again, if you know of parents raising sons who can contribute and have information to share, we'd love to hear it. Definitely want to get your thoughts and questions. That helps us shape future subject matter that we can talk about. But one of the highest responsibilities we have as a parent is to produce healthy, grounded children who will one day become parents themselves. That's a critical piece. That's a core responsibility. Mothers have a unique role to play. Fathers also have a unique role to play. And the more we can learn from each other and better understand strategies and dig a little deeper on things we're observing but may not have background on, we'll be all the better for it. All right. On behalf of J4 Conversations, we'll see you in the next round. Thank you guys so much. Love, love, love.